The Johnson family was like any other family in the sleepy outskirts of Amarillo, Texas. Tom Johnson, a construction worker, and his wife Sarah, a school teacher, lived in a modest, sun-bleached house with their 2 children, Emily and Jake, and their loyal German shepherd, Maximum. That summer had been unusually hot, the kind of dry heat that made the air shimmer over the dusty roads. Neighbors recalled seeing the family go about their usual routines that day. Emily riding her bike down the street, Jake kicking a soccer ball in the yard, Sarah tending to her small garden, and Tom coming home from work with a tired but content smile. Everything seemed ordinary, almost too ordinary. As dusk fell, an uneasy feeling began to settle over the neighborhood. The wind carried a strange stillness that made the cicadas seem louder, their buzzing almost frantic. Neighbors remembered noticing Max pacing nervously near the front door, his ears twitching at every sound, letting out low, warning growls. Some thought it was just the heat or the dog's instinct, but there was something in Max's behavior that made the adults exchange concerned glances. At around 8 p.m., the street fell silent, and the Johnson family seemed to vanish as if they had simply melted into the night air. The next morning, it became chillingly clear that something was terribly wrong. Plates from dinner were still on the kitchen table, cups half full, and the lights in the living room still glowed from the night before. Max was nowhere to be found, and the neighborhood felt unusually cold and empty, despite the blazing summer sun. Friends and relatives who tried calling the family got no answer. The unease turned into panic when neighbors started noticing subtle details. Doors unlocked, windows slightly ajar, and the garden gate swinging as if someone had passed through in a hurry. It was as if the Johnsons had left in such a rush that not a single thing was disturbed. Police were called immediately, and detectives scoured the property for clues. They found no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints, no footprints leading away, nothing that could explain a sudden disappearance of 4 people and a dog. The only hint of anything amiss was Max, who appeared later in the morning, wandering the street, barking furiously at the empty house. Even the officers couldn't calm him down. His eyes were fixed on the front door as if he was expecting someone, or something, to walk out at any moment. The entire scene had an eerie, frozen-in-time quality, leaving investigators uneasy and baffled. Rumors began circulating in Amarillo almost immediately. Some whispered about a possible kidnapping. Others feared something far more sinister, a stranger watching the family for months, waiting for the right moment. Every explanation seemed too ordinary, too simple, to fit the feeling of dread that clung to the neighborhood. As the days passed with no sign of the Johnsons, the disappearance started to become a local legend, a story whispered on front porches and at grocery stores. How a happy, normal family could vanish from a quiet Texas street one summer night, leaving nothing but questions, shadows, and a restless dog named Max. As the days turned into weeks, the disappearance of the Johnson family remained unsolved, and Amarillo began to feel the weight of a chilling silence. Law enforcement continued their investigation, but every lead seemed to vanish into thin air. Neighbors reported nothing unusual on the night of the disappearance, yet the air around the Johnson home felt heavy, as if it carried a lingering presence that couldn't be explained. News crews visited the small town, interviewing locals who all recounted the same uneasy feeling, a sense that the family had not merely left, but had been taken in a way that left no trace. Over the years, the house itself became a symbol of mystery and fear. Windows stared blankly into the dusty Texas plains, doors creaked in the wind, and the garden slowly surrendered to weeds. Locals avoided walking near the property, especially at night, claiming they felt eyes watching them from the shadows. Some even reported hearing faint whispers or the sound of children laughing in the dead of night, though no one could explain how. Every time someone mentioned the Johnsons, the town seemed to hold its breath, as if afraid that speaking their name aloud would somehow summon the unknown force that had taken them. Meanwhile, Max, the family dog, had been taken in by a neighbor. Even years later, he seemed haunted by the night everything changed. The dog would stare at the abandoned house for hours, whimpering and growling at nothing that humans could see. Behavioral specialists brought in to assess him found nothing physically wrong, just an intense, inexplicable anxiety tied to the property. It was as if Max carried a memory of the night the family vanished, an instinctual knowledge that no human could fully comprehend. To those who watched him, it was clear he had been witness to something terrifying, something that had remained hidden all these years. Every few months, new theories surfaced in the community. Some believed the family had been abducted by a stranger, while others whispered about darker possibilities, a cult, organized crime, or something supernatural. Amateur investigators explored the property, only to leave shaken, recounting strange drafts, sudden chills, and the feeling of unseen eyes tracking their every move. Yet no concrete evidence ever emerged. Every investigation ended the same way: dead ends, growing frustration, and the sense that the house itself refused to give up its secrets. Even after a decade, the disappearance continued to dominate local conversations. Parents warned their children not to play near the Johnson home. Strangers asked cautiously about the story when visiting town, and the police files grew thicker with unanswered questions. For the people of Amarillo, the Johnson case was no longer just a disappearance. It had become a legend, a haunting reminder that sometimes, the ordinary can vanish without warning, leaving behind only fear, rumors, and a restless dog named Max who seemed to know far more than anyone could ever imagine. As the years passed, the abandoned Johnson house seemed to take on a life of its own, and strange occurrences began to unsettle the neighborhood. Mail that was addressed to the family continued to arrive, sometimes months late, scattered across the lawn or stacked neatly on the porch as if someone, or something, had been checking it. Neighbors reported seeing lights flicker in the upper windows at odd hours, even though the house had no electricity hooked up since 1995. The air around the property carried a heaviness, a silent warning that made those who ventured too close uneasy and jumpy. The local kids were the first to whisper about shadows moving inside the home. They claimed to see figures walking past the grimy windows, sometimes just out of the corner of their eyes. One summer, a group of teens dared each other to sneak onto the property after dark. They told stories of cold gusts of wind that came from nowhere, doors creaking on their own, and the faintest sound of a child giggling somewhere deep within the house. Though most dismissed it as imagination, a few admitted later that Max's low growls from the yard had terrified them even more than the house itself. Even the adults began to notice that Max, the family dog, had an almost supernatural attachment to the property. No matter where he lived or who cared for him, he would eventually find his way back, circling the house and barking insistently at the front door. He refused to enter but growled and paced as though warning anyone who came near. Experts in animal behavior suggested that dogs sometimes sense danger or hidden presences, but Max's intensity went beyond normal instincts. It was as if he remembered the moment the family vanished, and was waiting for someone to finally discover the truth. Over time, other strange clues emerged that hinted at a hidden story the neighborhood had never known. Objects would mysteriously shift positions, as if someone had touched them and replaced them. Small, scratch-like markings appeared on the walls inside the empty house, only to vanish when inspectors came to examine them. Neighbors reported hearing faint footsteps echoing on the creaking floorboards at night, though no one had entered the property. It was becoming increasingly clear that the Johnson home was far from ordinary, a place where something unseen lingered, quietly observing, waiting, and refusing to reveal itself. Perhaps the most chilling clue of all was the pattern of Max's behavior over the years. Every time someone approached the house, he would lock eyes on a specific spot near the front door, growling as though he knew something dreadful had been hidden there for decades. He refused to leave, sometimes barking for hours, until anyone daring enough to investigate retreated in fear. The dog's obsession with the house suggested that the truth about the Johnson family's disappearance was not lost, but buried somewhere deep within the walls, a secret only Max seemed to understand. After 25 years of silence, the Johnson house finally found new owners in 2020, a young couple named Mark and Lisa, drawn to the property by its low price and spacious layout. They were unaware of the neighborhood rumors, or perhaps they dismissed them as small-town superstition. At first, everything seemed perfectly normal. The house was dusty, the garden overgrown, and the paint peeling, but the couple saw potential. They were ready to restore it to its former charm, never imagining that the walls they admired held decades of unanswered questions. From the very first day, however, Max appeared. The dog, now old and gray, somehow found his way back to the property, as if drawn by a force no one could explain. He circled the house endlessly, barking at the front door with a persistence that unnerved Mark and Lisa. No matter how many times the neighbors tried to lure him away, Max returned, his eyes fixed on the empty windows, growling at shadows only he could see. The couple began to feel that they were not just buying a house. They had entered a trap set by time, memory, and something far more sinister. Strange events began almost immediately after they moved in. Doors creaked open on their own. Drafts of cold air swept through the hallways even though all windows were tightly shut, and faint noises echoed from the upper floors. At night, Mark and Lisa would hear soft footsteps, too heavy to be mice, too light to be the old floorboards settling. Max would react instantly, barking furiously at unseen intruders and refusing to move from certain corners of the house. The couple initially brushed it off as the eccentric behavior of an old dog, but the intensity of Max's reactions made them question what, or who, had been hiding in the house all these years. The neighbors, who had long avoided the Johnson property, began whispering about the newcomers. Some warned Mark and Lisa to be careful, recounting old tales of the family's disappearance. They spoke of Max's loyalty and strange behaviors, and how anyone daring to enter the house after dark often felt watched, followed, or unsettled in ways they couldn't explain. Mark and Lisa, while skeptical, couldn't deny the sense of dread that settled over the property each evening. Something about the place seemed alive, almost sentient, waiting for the right moment to reveal what it had kept hidden for decades. Max's obsession with the house intensified one night during a violent thunderstorm. Lightning illuminated the yard, and the wind rattled the windows. The dog would not leave the front steps, barking and scratching at the door with desperate urgency. It was clear to Mark and Lisa that Max was trying to lead them somewhere, to show them something. Every instinct screamed at them to pay attention. For the first time, they realized the house might not just hold memories of a vanished family. It might be guarding a secret that could change everything they thought they knew about that long-forgotten summer night in 1995. One stormy evening, as lightning streaked across the Texas sky, Mark and Lisa were exploring the old kitchen, trying to remove layers of dust and cobwebs. Max, unusually restless, pawed at the far corner of the room, growling and barking as though trying to point something out. The couple initially thought the dog was just reacting to the thunder, but when Mark leaned closer to investigate, he noticed a faint outline in the wall, almost like a panel had been covered over. The edges were subtle, worn, and nearly invisible, but Max's insistence made them impossible to ignore. With a mix of curiosity and apprehension, Mark pried the panel open, revealing a small, square room that had been completely hidden from view. The air inside was thick with decades of dust, mold, and something indefinable, a metallic, slightly damp scent that made Lisa gag. Sunlight from the kitchen barely reached inside, and the room seemed frozen in time. Inside were remnants of the Johnson family's life, a dusty photo of Tom, Sarah, Emily, and Jake, old toys scattered across the floor, a calendar from 1995 still pinned to the wall, and a diary that looked as though it had been hastily hidden. As Lisa picked up the diary, she noticed the pages were filled with frantic, almost unreadable handwriting. The entries spoke of paranoia and fear, detailing months of being watched and followed, of strange men loitering near the property, and doors mysteriously opening at night. The handwriting grew darker and more desperate as the pages progressed, hinting that someone had been inside the house during the family's final days, observing, manipulating, and keeping them trapped. Every line made the couple's skin crawl. Even the simplest of words, "I think they are here. Max won't stop growling. I can't escape," carried the weight of terror from decades ago. Max refused to leave the hidden room, pacing and growling at a specific corner, his hackles raised as though warning them of something buried. He pawed at the floorboard in that corner, and when Mark lifted it, they discovered a narrow trapdoor. The wood was old, warped, and coated in decades of grime, but it moved just enough to reveal a passageway beneath the house. The air rising from it was damp, cold, and suffocating, carrying a smell that made Lisa cover her mouth. The hidden passage was too small to enter comfortably, yet Max's urgency made it clear that something critical was down there, something connected to the family's disappearance. The discovery of the hidden room changed everything. It explained why Max had always been drawn back to the property, why he had been so protective, and why the house had seemed alive with secrets. The diary, the toys, and the subtle signs of life all pointed to the fact that the Johnsons had not vanished without a trace. They had left clues in the shadows, hidden for anyone brave enough to find them. Max had been waiting all these years, silently guarding the secret, urging the new owners closer to the truth. The room was more than just a hiding place. It was a warning, a puzzle, and a haunting reminder that the past sometimes refuses to stay buried. After discovering the hidden room, Max's behavior grew even more intense. He no longer just circled the house. He fixated on the trapdoor beneath the floorboard, growling and scratching with desperate urgency. Mark and Lisa watched in awe and fear as the dog refused to leave their side, barking at the corner as though signaling them to follow. Every instinct in the couple screamed to be cautious, yet it became painfully clear that Max was trying to guide them, leading them toward a secret buried deep within the house for 25 years. With the help of flashlights, Mark peered into the narrow passageway beneath the trapdoor. The darkness seemed to swallow the light, making the tunnel look endless and foreboding. A foul, damp smell rose up from the depths, mixed with the unmistakable scent of old earth and decay. Max stood at the edge, whining and pouring, refusing to step back. It was as if he was saying, "This is where it happened. This is what you need to see." Despite the fear clawing at their throats, Mark and Lisa felt compelled to follow, realizing that the dog held the key to uncovering the mystery that had haunted the Johnson family for decades. The passageway itself was claustrophobic, forcing the couple to crawl on their hands and knees through thick dust and cobwebs. Max moved carefully, his body low to the ground but tense, ears perked and growling at unseen corners. The dog's instincts were uncanny. Every turn he took, every pause he made, seemed deliberate. He led them to a section of the tunnel where the air grew colder and the smell more pungent, as if something hidden had been left to fester in the darkness. Mark and Lisa could feel their hearts pounding, each step deeper into the passage a step closer to the terrifying truth Max had been trying to reveal all these years. At the far end of the passage, Max stopped suddenly, barking and circling a corner where the floor looked slightly different, almost worn from repeated use. Lisa knelt down and noticed subtle scratches on the wood, as if someone, or something, had been there recently. It was the first tangible evidence that someone had been in this hidden space, and Max's insistence confirmed it. He sniffed the corner intensely, his eyes locked on the spot, growling in low, guttural warning. It became clear that the dog was not just protective. He was a living guide, a witness to events no human had fully understood, guarding a secret that had been buried far too long. Max's behavior revealed an extraordinary truth. He had never forgotten the night the family disappeared. Every growl, every paw at the door, every refusal to leave the property for decades was purposeful. He had been waiting for someone brave enough to uncover what had been hidden, leading Mark and Lisa step by step toward the chilling reality beneath the house. The dog's loyalty and instinct transcended the ordinary. He was a key to unraveling a mystery that had haunted an entire town, a silent guardian of a story the walls of the Johnson home had kept for 25 years. At the end of the narrow passageway, Mark and Lisa discovered a section of the floor that seemed oddly hollow beneath the boards. With Max's insistent barking filling the silent tunnel, they pried the boards open and revealed a cramped space, large enough to contain a few belongings, but clearly not designed for comfort. Inside were items that sent a shiver down their spines: dusty shoes, children's toys, and clothing worn and folded carefully, as though someone had tried to preserve the family's life in secret. It was clear the Johnsons had been somewhere within this house, yet hidden away, their existence trapped behind walls no one had dared to enter. Among the items was a stack of personal belongings that seemed almost untouched by time. Emily's favorite doll lay on top, its button eyes staring blankly, while Jake's soccer ball was scuffed but recognizable. Even more unsettling was the family photo of Tom, Sarah, and the kids, slightly faded but intact, placed neatly against a wall as if to mark that this room had once been lived in. Max pawed at the items, whimpering softly, as though communicating to Mark and Lisa that these were pieces of the family he had never stopped protecting. Every object seemed to whisper the story of lives interrupted and secrets kept for decades. The couple also found the diary, which they had brought with them from the hidden room upstairs. Reading through it by the dim flashlight, they realized the horror of what the family had endured. The parents' entries detailed months of fear, threats, and strange sightings around the property, culminating in desperate notes about an unknown presence that had forced them into hiding. The passages hinted that the family had been alive for some time, living in secrecy in these hidden spaces, but the diary ended abruptly, leaving the exact circumstances of their fate a terrifying unknown. It was a puzzle, a chilling reminder that someone had been controlling their lives without leaving a trace. As they explored further, Mark discovered a small trapdoor at the back of the passage. The space beneath it was deeper, narrower, and cloaked in darkness so complete it seemed almost unnatural. Max refused to enter but barked frantically, pawing at the floor as if urging them to continue carefully. The air was thick and heavy, carrying a metallic tang that made Lisa gag. The space contained remnants that suggested someone had tried to hide more than just belongings, perhaps the very truth of what had happened to the Johnsons. It was a discovery that blurred the line between a disappearance and something far darker, leaving more questions than answers. Max, exhausted yet unwavering, lay at the entrance of the hidden passage, growling softly at the shadows while Mark and Lisa examined the horrifying scene. For the first time, the couple realized that the dog's relentless behavior over the years had not been random. He had been a silent witness, guiding them toward a truth that had remained buried for a quarter of a century. The evidence in the hidden room and passageway suggested that the Johnsons' disappearance was not the result of chance, but of something deliberate, sinister, and meticulously concealed. Max had been waiting all these years for someone to finally uncover it, revealing a chilling glimpse into a secret that had haunted Texas for decades. As Mark and Lisa stepped back from the hidden passage, Max finally lay down, exhausted but calm, as if his mission was complete. The house fell silent, yet the weight of what they had uncovered lingered in the air, an invisible presence that no one could see but everyone could feel. The Johnson family had vanished, yet fragments of their lives, carefully hidden, had survived, protected by a loyal dog who never forgot. The diary, the toys, the hidden rooms, they told a story that words alone could not capture. The family had lived in fear, trapped in secrecy, their final days hidden from the world. But despite the mystery and horror, one truth was undeniable. Max had guided them to the secrets the house refused to release, a silent guardian of a story the town of Amarillo would never forget. Even as authorities continue to investigate, no one has fully unraveled what truly happened to the Johnsons. And as the sun sets over the Texas plains, some swear they can still hear Max barking at the empty house, reminding everyone that the past never truly dies, and some secrets refuse to stay buried. The story of the Johnson family is a haunting reminder. Sometimes, the smallest witnesses, like a dog named Max, carry the heaviest truths, and some doors, once opened, reveal mysteries far darker than anyone could imagine.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.